Hey, you want to talk about that video? Man, I can't hear nothing. Oh, you're on mute.
Top of the top two, you know we're gonna talk about it. Definitely we want to talk about it. First of all, good morning. Top. Whoa. Rewind that thing. Rewind that top of the top. You know what I mean? Welcome. You know what I mean? You reached Pushing Ponds. You know, with Lorenzo and you know what I mean. You're gonna have to say that, Lorenzo. El Magnifico. Let's do it one more time.
El Magnifico.
El Magnifico. You know what I mean? All right, that's my man. All right, and with King Phillip. All right, so what we doing today is, you know, we are pushing ponds. We are pushing ponds, and it just dawned on me that I didn't even send him the actual game challenge. You know, so
If you're scared, just say that.
Hey, you know, I'm scared. All right, I said it. All right, I'm scared. You know what I mean? I don't want no trouble. All right, I don't want no trouble whatsoever. You know what I mean? But this is what we're gonna do. I don't know if it just sent you the okay, it's a 30-minute game. All right. Let me go ahead and share this real fast because we're gonna have a conversation about that video as well. Before you make your move, let me go ahead and share the screen so they can see you make your first bum ass move. You know what I mean? That's what we're gonna call it right there. And we shit talking too. So if you thought we wasn't, we was. All right.
Oh, man.
All right, go ahead, Renzo, make your first move so we can go ahead and jump into this so it don't end our game prematurely. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and make my first move as well. All right, but I'm gonna go ahead and jump into this disclaimer. You know what I mean? You came into the podcast where again we're talking about the issues within the Black and brown community and those issues that's deadly and destructive that we're not saying anything about. You know, one thing about it is once we talk about those issues, we provide solutions as well. You know, so if there's anything that we say that you find offensive or anything of that sort, please, we're asking you to reevaluate why what was said made you feel that way. All right. So this is the new podcast where you got my man, you know, Lorenzo El Magnifico, you know what I mean? And myself, again, he's speaking from the brown perspective, and I'm coming to it from the black perspective, you know, just so you can hear the issues from both sides and not just me talking for, you know what I mean, for the Mexicans, period. All right. So,
You know,
first of all, let's talk about that video, man.
I
Oh, dang, it aborted the game. We got a rematch. My bad. It aborted the game. Yeah, let's talk about that video though.
how do you feel about it?
You know, to be honest with you, you know, the video it's a reality that we live in every day. You know what I mean? It's the fact that they put it out there in that form, that fashion, that made me look at it like, damn, is that really what it is? Is that really what's happening? You know what I mean? That's what I had asked myself initially. You know, but you didn't want that pun. I ain't gonna ask you to take
hey,
it
you
in.
want to put the game up on the screen?
Oh dang, I thought I had it up there. Oh dang, I'm tripping. Yeah, it's just us on the screen, huh? There you go, folks. So y'all
You're
can
not
see
gonna, you're not gonna be able to see my brilliance.
Yo, brilliant. They
Yeah.
just
So look about this chess thing, feeling about, you know, people, oh, they want to beat Phil. I want to beat Phil. You know, want to beat Phil in chess. I'm gonna say here's a different perspective. I'm gonna test myself against Phil. Because my kung fu teacher, he would always encourage us to compete in actual fighting, like in combat, like in amateur combat sports, right? He would encourage us because it's like, now you know where you stand. You know, you come in here and you train every day, but unless you actually go out there and fight, you don't know where you stand. And so right here, I'm testing myself against Phil. You know, 2010, Phil just like smack me, right? It's different. And so now I know by playing against you, I know where I stand.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I understand that part, you know what I mean, and that's clear, you know what I mean. It's the part that I was talking about, with you know the people who are watching, you know, the audience, you know, the folks who's you should have did this on the sidelines, you know what I mean, the commentators on the sidelines, and you know I can win. I'll play 15 games. I'll win 14 straight and lose one. Then everybody it's a whole uproar and applause and stuff like that. Like I ain't get one fist pound, one high five, one pat on the back for winning the 14 games. Is almost like folks wait for you to fall. You know what I mean?
That's what happens when you're the beast.
Man.
Did you watch the Mike Tyson Roy Jones Jr. fight a couple weeks ago?
I didn't. No, I missed that.
In the post fight interview, you know, the commentators looking at Roy Jones, well, man, glad you're safe, glad da 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 da. Mike Tyson's there like, how come no one care about my ass? He's like, because you Mike Tyson.
Good. Say, because you Mike, for sure. All right. If y'all missed the video that we played in terms of the intro, you know, it was looking at the school to prison pipeline. It was looking at the race that black folks have to, you know, not even just black folks. It was looking at black folks, brown folks, and women. You know what I mean? How we line up in a race to equality, to, you know, to that pursuit to happiness, and what that race looked like from a black perspective to a white perspective. You know what I mean? What did you think about it though, Renzo?
You know, and I mentioned this before. If you asked me that same question 10 years ago when I was in college, it's a different response. Um,
Why is that?
10 years ago, man, because, well, when I was in college, I was being educated in all this stuff. You know, I was taking sociology classes. I was in, I was surrounded by the activist community. And so all this knowledge about our society, I was like downloading it. I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, there's research behind it. Oh, blah, blah, blah. People have already, theorized it. People have already been, um, raising awareness, all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that makes complete sense. Here's now how my perspective is different 10 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Is I no longer see, I understand it's systemic inequality, all right? Based on race, based on gender, based on age. Um, and however, I used to see that as a disadvantage.
Hmm.
Oh man, poor me. Oh man. No, I'm at a disadvantage. Now I see that it's like I understand all these situations, but that means I gotta be stronger. I gotta be better. I gotta rise up. So like boxers, oftentimes at the professional level, before a fight, they'll go on like a 6 week training camp and they'll go to high elevation up in the mountain somewhere, Big Bear Mountain, California somewhere. And the reason they do that is to deprive themselves of oxygen
Hmm.
to increase their stamina, increase their like red blood cells, because then the body adapts. It starts producing more like red blood cells. It becomes more efficient in distributing oxygen. So then when they come down to fight in Vegas, which is like very low elevation, they're in like super shape.
Mm-hmm.
So they purposely deprive themselves, give themselves more challenges rather than taking the easy route. Oh, I'm gonna go where it's easy to breathe. No, I'm gonna go where it's hard to breathe, and I'm gonna get strong over there. Then I'm come over here and do my work in the easy place. Um, so the way I see it now, all those disadvantages only force me either you rise up to these challenges and overcome them, or you get beat up in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I see it now.
I mean, look at that though too. You know, even with us rising to these challenges that we're faced on a day-to-day basis, you know what I mean? We still, we still, we still manage to get ourselves killed by the police. We still manage to get ourselves killed by in our own community. You know what I mean? So we still manage to do all this, even though we know our odds are against us, even though we know that 1 in every 4 black boys will experience prison at some point in their life, even though we know 1 in every 7 black young men, young Hispanic, Latino, Mexican, brown young boys will experience prison at some point in their life. Even though we know these odds are against us, you know what I mean? We still want to shoot the dice. We still want to gamble our life pretty much.
Here, here's the other part. You mentioned in our pursuit of happiness, right?
Right.
And I think ultimately that's what it is. Everything we do is because we think we'll be happier. Oh, I'm gonna go make more money because it'll make me happier. I'm gonna go get a bigger house because it'll make me happier. I'm gonna go get a new car, make me happier. I'm gonna go get like a new girlfriend because it'll make me happier. I'm gonna go get blah 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 whatever because I'll be happier because of that. Like that's really, I feel like that's the ultimate goal. We think we'll be happier, but I've seen some of those super wealthy people and they don't look happy.
Hmm.
In that video, they're succeeding in many ways. They don't even look happy.
I mean, who created that culture? Who created that? You know, with more money, I'm gonna be happy. With more cars, with a bigger car, with a bigger house, with a bigger dick, I'm gonna be happy. You know what I mean? Who created that culture? Because I don't know, like, I can't say that I come from a family. I come from an environment where money was, you know what I mean, where we had it like that, where we can, I seen the finer things in life. I can't say that I had that. So when it comes to us saying we want a bigger house, a bigger car, is that from lack of?
I think it was created, man. It was implanted in our minds through the dominant culture, consumer culture. I just know when I was like 6 years old, man, I was a happy little kid.
Mm.
You know, we didn't have none. I grew up in poverty. We didn't have much, but I was happy because I didn't. I was, before I grown up. Um, man,
I mean, to
already,
that point though, we didn't have nothing though, but we were happy.
yeah,
You know, looking at growing up in a household full of, you know, there was 9 of us in a single family household where, you know, we ate, our clothes was clean, but we wasn't thinking about, you know what I mean, money type of
yeah,
happiness. You know what I mean? And as an adult right now, I'm sitting up here thinking, I think that was, you know, my happiest point in my life type of
yeah.
deal. And that's crazy.
And
Or
so like that's what that's the perspective that I'm looking at it right now. When I was 20 years old, I'm looking at that video. I'm like, man, that's unfair. Man, that's some bullshit. Da, 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 da. But now it's like, I don't even need all that to be happy. As long as I can eat, I got somewhere to live. I'm surrounded by people who love me. Like I've grown to it's like, man, I'm cool.
mm,
I don't need to be a Fortune 500 executive. I don't.
mm,
You know. And so that's how my perspective has changed over the last, in these 10 years.
mm.
And so now I take it as, what, despite all these advantages, maybe I didn't, I didn't have the support system to become this, that, or the third. But right now in my life, man, I'm cool. I'm happy. I'm chilling. I have enough. I'm grateful for what I got. And all those setbacks and disadvantages growing up, man, it only made me stronger.
I mean, is that did that prepare us for a lack of mind frame from when we got older, so that we can be content, we can be
Yeah,
complacent with having nothing.
yeah, it does,
You know
man.
what I
Like
mean?
it puts us in tough positions. However, the thing is, if you can overcome them, man, then the reward is even greater.
Hey, just so y'all know too, we completely off our topic right now. All right, we are completely off our topic, and that's all right. You know what I mean? Just because of the fact, you know, that video, it touched many things, even within our own topic. You know what I mean? The part that hit the most, the part that hit home close to me was, you know, the rest area. Did you peep the rest area?
The
Where
what?
the rest area in the video? It was a little rest area off on the side, and then it closed the gates, and it had the gated community. You know what I mean? So it was like, you know, we, you know, looking at that aspect and that point. I mean, I'm like, how, you know, we can't even rest. You know what I mean? We don't even get a breather per se, just because it's always, you know, they
Mm-hmm.
say if it's not one thing, it's two.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let's go ahead and jump back. Let's go
Yo,
ahead and jump back into our topic though,
can
unless
I
you
can
got
I
something else.
can I talk about my name first though?
Yes, please. Yeah, do
Okay.
that.
So recently, I changed my nickname to El Magnifico.
El Magnifico.
The the reason I did that, man, because there's something about Mexican culture where your nicknames they either like play off your insecurities. Like if you overweight, like, hey, what up, skinny? You know?
Slim.
Yeah, what up, chubs? Or man, and like it's just like even in like the gang culture, it's like the nicknames are like the cutest things. They're supposed to be some tough guys, but like their nicknames are like Cricket. Hey, what's up, Cricket? You know, Payaso. Payaso means clown. Like every Mexican gang
Yeah.
has a homie named
Oh,
Payaso in it.
pie. So
It
yeah,
means clown. What's up, clown?
I had no idea that's what that meant. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Uh, and it's like Chapo, like El Chapo Guzman. You
Mm,
know what that means? It means
nah,
shorty. Because he's short, he's like 5'6". Like this is like the most ruthless in his head, his most
that a
ruthless
killer.
drug kingpin, dude. And it's like, what's up, shorty? But so I'm looking at this, man. You gotta do it. Like, what's up, Marshmallow? That's the big homie, Marshmallow. He did 8 years of triple max security. Like,
Big homie Marsh. Just call me
so
Marsh.
I'm like, man, what is it about? I'm gonna change my own nickname. El Magnifico means the magnificent in Italian.
Okay.
So Lorenzo can be either Spanish or Italian. So that's why my name is Lorenzo Magnifico de Sanchez. Magnificent. I'm
Okay.
not gonna tell my insecurities. Shoot.
That fuck you mean, shoot. All right. So now y'all know. All right. Now y'all know. Come correct, shoot. Period. All right. Um. Let's go ahead and jump into our topic. You know what I mean? So our topic is looking at, the violent nature behind the black and brown community. You know what I mean? We're looking at, again, it's not just the police that we have to look out for. It's not just these white folks that we have to look out for. It's our own that we truly have to keep an eye out and a mind out for as well. So the topic was this is a topic that was brought on by Lorenzo, and I want to know why he wanted to discuss, violence within the black and brown community. You know what I mean?
Um,
First of all, before we jump into these questions,
yeah, violence because my
magnifico. I'm gonna get it. I'm practicing, but I'm gonna get it. You know what I mean? El magnifico. You know what I mean?
and I want to bring up violence, man, because my experience in Asia, in India, amongst the Tibetan people, completely shifted how I see violence, different from how in the West. And so, and I feel like some of that knowledge and understanding could really benefit um, our community and our people, our families, everything. But so, like that's why I bring it up. Um, I want to start with though, what's your experience around violence? Growing up in your family, in your home, at school, in your community, being, were you around it? Did you perpetrate it? Did you experience it yourself? Like what's your experience around that, Phil?
Violence, growing up, me and my older brother, we were always fighting. You know what I mean? We were real close in age, and that was one of our ways of communicating. We weren't very effective when it came to words. You know what I mean? So we learned how to use our fists to settle debates, to settle debates, any kind of anything that we needed. You know what I mean? We was settled with fighting. So we carried that behavior from our household to sibling fights, us wrestling and fighting at home, to us fighting and wrestling in school, at church, outside of the house, in the community. You know what I mean? Because that's what we conditioned ourselves to, and how to communicate and stuff like that. And that's the community as well. So it wasn't like the community that we came from, we speaking the language that they didn't know. Fuck no, they knew violence as well. They knew how
Yeah,
to fight as well. You know what I
yeah,
mean? We didn't have guns then. It was really, you know what I mean? You had to know how to knuckle up, and you had to have a good chin too. You just couldn't talk no trash and not have a good chin, because it run right into it. You know what I mean? And nowadays these boys, they talk stuff and they don't have a good chin, but they got a pistol.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So even looking at the killings and stuff like that, when we were younger, I wasn't mindful to it like I am now. And I don't know if it's because I'm an adult now. You know what I mean? But us fighting at home became us fighting other people in the community. It was never us fighting each other out in the community or in school and stuff like that. It was us fighting other people out in the community or at school and stuff like that together. We built that love. You know what I mean? So out of all of us fighting, out of all the years of us fighting, that love was built, so that if he got into it with somebody else, I'm running over there to help him out, whether he needed the help or not. And it was the same thing on my end. So we was the Bash brothers in schools. You know what I mean? So, you know, um, video games, I couldn't say there were many shooting and violent video games then. We had Super Mario's. We didn't have too many shooting games and stuff like that besides Duck Hunt. You know what I mean? And we shooting at ducks and shit. We wasn't shooting at people or driving around in cars and jacking people and doing all that shit that they have access to now. So I can't say that we picked the violence up from video games. Movies was always an era.
Yeah.
Movies was always the move. So it was preconditioned.
No, yeah, absolutely, man. And like sometimes, I find it difficult because it's like the language that people know. People know violence. People know
Mhm.
fear. And sometimes, like trying to work with someone, I'm trying to maybe work through love, but they don't understand that.
Mhm.
What they
Mhm.
understand is fear and threats. Okay, now I'm
Yeah.
gonna listen to you.
Yeah.
You try to work through love, it's like, no, fuck you. I gotta do shit, and it's like it is master culture.
What didn't Al Capone say? You can get far with you can get far with love or something, but you can get further with a pistol. You
Something
know,
like
I
that.
forgot. Yeah, I forgot what he said, but it was on those lines. You know what I mean?
Um, yeah, man. And no, I grew up, fighting too. And here's what's funny though is when I was like little, like 5 or 6 years old. No, even at that age, I always wanted to learn how to box.
Hmm.
I think first time I got beat up, I was 8 years old. And this dude had older brothers,
I don't know
so
if
he
that's
knew how
something
to
people to admit to. You know what I mean? No, I'm playing.
whatever, Man, I was 8 years old. This dude had older brothers, so he was like how you were saying, he was used to, tussling and he was used to that aggressive nature. And
Hmm.
me, I'm the oldest. I didn't have no older brothers, and man, he beat the crap out of me. Man, I was crying. I was like,
Oh man.
And I think ever since that day, I want to learn how to fight. I want to learn how to box. I'm going to boxing gym, and like that really impacted me a lot. And then when I was 10 years old, my parents separated. We went through all this. We ended up moving to Colorado. My dad stayed in California. Like I became very angry
Hmm.
going into middle school.
Hmm.
I got in tons of fights middle school. Um, and
I mean,
like
what was you fighting for though, too?
I think that's the other part I wanna bring up, man. It's like I felt like there's just something in me that I felt like I had to prove myself. I think is this notion of masculinity. I'm tough. I'm tough. I'm tough.
Mm.
I had to prove that. I felt like I did. And here's the irony though is once I actually learned how to fight, I began boxing when I was 13 years old. Went to a boxing gym. I would walk like a half hour to the gym just to train for 2 hours and then walk a half hour back.
Mm.
Um, Once I actually started getting into the boxing gym, I got into less fights. I began fighting less. So
Mm.
when I was in middle school, I didn't know how to fight, but I thought I was tough. Strength, speed, aggression, agility. Um, I started training at a boxing gym. My fighting decreased going into high school,
Hmm.
but I was still getting several fights. And one of the reasons though behind that is because now people don't want to fight me.
Mm.
Now you can throw that one too. Here's an example. Shoot. Anyway, so here's an example. I did my first semester of freshman year in California. Then I moved to Colorado, second semester of freshman year in high school. And I went to a white school in Boulder. My mom was living in Boulder at the time. It was all white school, their parents were, doctors and lawyers and whatnot. And I was like 100, probably 120 pounds. Like short, skinny, new kid, Mexican, just transferred. And within a month, this white boy comes and picks a fight with me. I didn't even know this kid, but he was a junior. I was a freshman. He was a junior. I was like 120 pounds. He was like 180. He was a captain of the wrestling team. So he came over to my locker after school and just straight. He thinks he's just gonna punk me. He thinks that he's gonna sweat me and I'm gonna back off and he's gonna look like a cool tough guy, right? But he didn't know I love to fight, and so um yeah. And so, he goes with all his friends. He's got his crew right there. He's like, he starts talking shit. Oh, he's gonna curb check me. I'm gonna curb check you. Just go outside. Blah, 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 blah. I was like, right here, right now. We're right in the middle of the school, right in the middle of the commons. Shit, you wanna fight me? We wanna do it right here, right now. He's like, no, let's go outside. But nah, fuck that. Let's go right here, right now. And then all his boys like, bro, just fight him, right? So I put my hands up, hit him with the 1-2. I busted his face open, nose bleeding, mouth busted open. He takes me to the ground, and his blood is like pouring over me,
Oh man.
because and so this fight happens. January comes and breaks it up. After that, then no other white boy ever messed with me at that school for the rest of the year, right?
Mm,
It's like once you learn how to fight, people don't want to fight you no more.
mm,
Um, so I got into less fights consequently, right? And once I began learning how to fight, I no longer felt like I had to prove myself. I'm gonna show you how tough I am.
mm-hmm,
If you want to find out, come find out.
mm-hmm,
But I ain't gotta go out and prove it.
mm-hmm.
I ain't gotta go out to the world. Try to tell show how tough or how strong I am. Like, and it's an insecurity that comes from the masculinity, that the masculine culture. Um, um, yeah, man. What you think about that, Phil?
I mean, I've heard and I've read a few articles on, just how when men aren't present in the households, um, how the kids make up for that void, how they make up for that missing energy. You know what I mean? And showing out is a means for that. Fighting is a means for that. You know what I mean? And it comes back down to, looking at that article I had tagged you in this morning too, that video. I mean, with fathers, with black men, with brown men not being in the
Yeah,
households, with us not being in the households.
yeah. That, and I think another aspect related to that is confidence, right? If you don't have a father in the household, that's going to affect your confidence in yourself, your self image, your self esteem. And a way I can gain that is if I beat the shit out of other dudes, I feel more confident in myself.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like subconsciously that's something that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was true with me. My personal experience. I'm talking about myself here.
Yeah.
Um, but once I began getting trained in like kung fu, Muay Thai, you know, boxing, jiu-jitsu, it's like, man, I ain't got nothing to prove to you. Shoot, I did that in the ring. I did that in the gym. I did that on the mat. I proved myself. Um, yeah. So having a father figure to instill that confidence in both a young man and a young woman, man, major, and addressing the violence in our community.
I mean, I've I salute women. I love women who are taking these roles on and demonstrating this strength. You know what I mean? Showing that they don't quote unquote need a man for shit. All right. But at the same time, how women feel and how kids are being affected are two different stories.
Yeah.
A lot of the and is unfortunate that a lot of these women don't realize that as strong as they are, I mean, and as beautiful, it's still with mind frame of, oh, I can do this on my own, I don't need him for shit. You know what I mean? That mind frame is damaging, for the women. I
No,
know
it
the
is,
men, I
man.
know men fucked up, period. I know men fuck up all the time. You know what I mean? To the point where some of these women don't want anything to do with the men who they let nut inside of them. You know what I mean? Who they let raw dog and all that other shit. You know what I mean? Now they don't want nothing to do with this
Uh,
man.
yeah,
And
and
that's
sometimes
a
that's a good
whole
thing.
that's a
Yeah,
whole
sometimes
nother
that's
time.
better.
I mean, is it though?
Well, so
If
here's
if if
what.
this is the person who you was having raw sex with, was letting this individual spill his semen, nut, put all that energy all up in you,
Yeah, here's
there
what I'm
had
gonna say
to
about
be
that.
some kind of feelings right there. There had to be something. You know what I mean?
Here's what I'm saying about that though is like talking to young people is like you chose to lay up with this dude. You know he ain't shit already.
Yeah.
You know,
Facts.
so like that's your fault too.
For
Um,
similes. All right.
um, And so the other thing is, I heard this quote is like, um, be careful, or like something along the lines of, or someone once told me, how you treat your mother is how you're gonna treat your wife,
Mm,
right? And the same
mm,
thing is who, who your baby daddy is, or who the father figure in your family is, how he treats women. That's how your son is gonna treat women too.
mm,
You know.
mm.
So if you're laying up with a dude who's out there gang banging in and out of prison, got multiple baby mamas, and you have his kid, that's the track that you putting your son on too.
I mean, peep this other trap though. There's men out here doing community work that's out here, that got they college diplomats, you know what I mean? That got a few letters after their names that are certified in certain things and got more letters and numbers after their name. And these men are still out here abusing their wives, abusing their kids, abusing their
Yeah,
girlfriends, you know what I mean? But in the communities, they're seen as something else. They're seen as this savior.
I dated a
I, mean,
girl who,
I think that's more worse. I think that's worse than a female dealing with a gangster. You know what I mean? If that's all that nigga doing is out here gang banging. But
no, no, I dated a girl who her father was a pastor,
mm,
and he's like, he would beat his wife, he would beat my mom all the time.
mm,
You know,
mm.
it was come Sunday morning though.
What? That comes Sunday morning. All right. I mean, and we excuse it. That's a part of the behavior that we just shrug off. We don't say anything about, and we haven't even touched into, domestic violence. We haven't even touched the whole domestic scene when it comes
Yeah,
to the Black and brown community. I recently just had a cousin who killed his kid's mom, his wife, and then killed himself. You know what I mean? And this is my cousin, my first cousin on my dad's side. Had no idea what he was going through. You know what I mean? But we haven't even touched on the domestic violence piece. You know what I mean?
and
Just looking at it.
yeah, like I want to say something too, like because violence is the language that we speak, our community is what we know. We don't know the language of love. We know the language of violence. And so even when it comes to like being around women, unless you have like this aggressive violent nature, this hyper masculine aggressive violent nature, it's like they're not even attracted to you because they're not attracted to love. They're attracted to violence because that's what they know.
Yeah. I mean, and that's
You know,
crazy too, because I'm
and
always asking women who are like attracted to that kind of man, why? You know what I mean? And then, I had one dude, he just posted on Facebook the other day. I ain't the romantic type. I don't do the lovey-dovey shit. I'm a gangster, you know what I mean? So don't try to think I'm gonna switch it up 2-3 months into our relationship. Like he letting you know, like he's a gangster, you know what I mean? And they still gonna come running
mm,
straight to
and and that's why I don't feel bad, man. Because if you have a baby with dudes like this, and then he's gonna have to picture my baby daddy ain't shit, and like you chose
I
him.
mean, and then that's a whole nother story because a lot of these men who are like that are self-conscious. You know what I mean? They very insecure, to the
Mm,
point where they won't let these women go on after them. They won't let these women be great after them. Like if you dogged your woman out, nigga, let her go out and be great with the next man. You know what I mean? And that's another issue within our community.
yeah.
That's a whole nother issue within our community. But let's go ahead and tap into our questions real fast. We ain't even touch our questions one time. You know what I mean? Why is violence glorified in our community?
Yeah.
Why is violence so glorified in our community? And again, you know, we're looking at the movies, we're looking at the music, we're looking at, I mean, even when it comes to class, these rappers are still out here getting their shit peeled. So money has nothing to do with them being safe from the violence. Why is violence so glorified in our community? And again, too, is even talking about, if somebody from one section kills somebody from another section, they're gonna name a strand of weed after the person who was killed.
No.
Like they name and they giving that. It's beyond me. I don't get it. I don't get it.
All right, I'm gonna throw in some like intellectual stuff. All right.
Yes, indeed.
If we go back to, say, we go back to colonization of brown people, right? When Cortez arrived and fought with the Aztecs, it wasn't just the Spanish. You know, he had tribes on his side because the Aztecs were an empire. They had enemies. So it was brown people fighting brown people, and in order to subdue it, and then afterwards they set up a caste system where the Spanish are on top, indigenous on the bottom. And what that does though, and so the approach though is now we have to subdue a large population of brown people, of indigenous, Aztecs, Maya, all kinds of different tribes. And the way you do that, the way they did that was through fear. Through the threat of violence. You obey us or we kill you. You obey us or we will torture you. There's a story of Cuauhtemoc who was tortured and his feet were burned. And that's kind of the mentality that has been passed down. You obey me through the threat of violence. That's how the slave master controlled the slaves.
And that's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, Miss Tutu, she said, I think women do that to protect themselves from being hurt again and again, so they expect less. Just in terms of going for, those type of dudes. So instead of, I mean, you go less, so you expect less, but a lot of y'all still end up hurt behind dudes who you lowered your bar for.
Yeah. A lot of these situations are cycles, self-perpetuating cycles. So like I've talked about my stepdad, like I thought he wasn't shit, alcoholic. He wake up in the morning and have a beer. And I'm like, Mom, like why are you with this loser this whole time? Like, why the dude's a loser? Then eventually I realized, where's she gonna find a Mexican man who's non-alcoholic? Where's she gonna find him? So I'm like, kind of just what you got. And so that's what my approach has been. I'm gonna become that person, right?
So
I'm gonna work on myself.
So speaking of the alcoholism in the Mexican community, I'm always hearing jokes. I'm seeing jokes and shit about it. I see memes and shit with Mexicans just singing and drunk and shit like that. How big of an issue is alcoholism in the Mexican community?
What was your question? It kind of cut out a little bit.
How big is alcoholism in the Mexican community?
If you don't drink, you're weird. It's normal. Like, I go to a carne asada, I'll have one beer. What's wrong with you? You Mexican? Fool, check out these tattoos.
Check out these tattoos, fool. Yeah. What do you mean?
But see, the thing is, it's poison, man. It's poison. If you go to Mexico and you see these men who are just alcoholics and they're skinny and they ain't doing shit with their lives, all they do is drink. It's like sad. It's depressing. But that's also another way that they subdued our people. They break the families apart. In the black community, you got crack. You got throughout 500 years of oppression in Mexico, you had alcohol poisoning and breaking down these families communities to a point where it's just accepted. It's just normal. It's just what we do. And it's even a form of masculinity. If you don't drink, then you're not man. You're less manly. How much you can drink equates with more manliness, right?
What about the actions from drinking? Does that equate to manliness as well? So is beating on your women and stuff like that? Does that equate to manliness?
I think it is, honestly. And that's where I chose to be different. Because I'll go to a party, I'll have one beer, and if they want to question my masculinity, you really want to throw hands with me? You really want to throw hands with me?
All right. All right. So again, check it out. We're talking about why is violence so glorified in our community? That was the first question that we had asked. That was the first question that we had asked. Why is violence glorified in our community?
And that's
All right.
another part, man. Did you just catch that? Right? Is I use violence as a solution.
As a solution. I was just
Right?
about to say that. I was just about to say that.
And it's because that's the language that they speak. I'm not there trying to pick fights with no one, but if you come at me, I'm gonna speak your language.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't understand. Yeah, they don't
Okay.
understand. Look, I'm only gonna have one beer because I value my health and wellness. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to enter old age with grace and travel the world at 70 years old. They don't
Mm-hmm.
understand that. Bunch of bullshit, man. you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Want to
so
travel the
sometimes
world
you
at
gotta speak their language.
40. Yes, indeed. Yes,
Yeah,
indeed. All right. And I mean, and sometimes how's that counterproductive though? Again, we're talking
man.
about violence being glorified in our community, and we're speaking the language of violence at times to equate the violence that we're thrown or we're given.
Man, it even comes from our parents. You know, like I grew up, my mom barking orders at me, and if you don't do what I say, I'm gonna hit you.
Mm,
That's violence, man. And it's through a threat. Like you listen to me, you obey me, or else.
mm,
You have a chancla being thrown at you. Yeah, things being
mm.
thrown. You got a belt. You know, yeah. And I used to make jokes all the time. I was like, that's how I developed my reflexes. Shoot,
All
chanclas
right.
being thrown, dodge left and right.
All right.
but uh, but it goes back to like the slave master, the colonization, the Europeans invading and subduing colored people.
Mm-hmm.
You obey us or else through a threat of violence. And so that's what we learned. That's what our parents and grandparents and great grandparents learned on how to control people.
So where did it shift? And what I mean by that is if we're looking at the black and brown community violence that we put amongst ourselves and amongst each other, when did that become the move? When did that thinking, when did that mind frame, when did that culture shift from us wanting to stand against those who are trying to colonize us and strip us of who we are to us being combative against our own? You know
And
what
we
I
do
mean?
it.
And we
Yeah.
do it. That become, you know what I mean? That's the whole thing. Like, I don't know when that became the move.
But after hundreds of years, generation after generation after generation, it be, it's our culture, it's our parents, it's our grandparents. Here's what I want to bring up. Um, is does the fish know it's in water? If it's born in water its whole life, it swims in the ocean its whole life. Does it ever know it's even surrounded by water? Not until you
Mm,
take that fish out. Once you take that fish out, it's like, oh shit, I've been in water my whole life. I didn't even realize it.
mm,
And it wasn't until I went to go hang out with these Tibetans, and these monks, and that I realized I grew up in negativity and violence my whole life, and it was normal. I didn't even realize it. It wasn't until
mm,
I hung out with these people who talked about peace and love all the time and meditated that I realized how much negativity I was immersed in.
mm,
Um, I was a fish out of water at that point.
mm. I see
Um,
what you mean.
and I was talking to these. There's this one Tibetan dude. I volunteered at the Tibetan Center for Education of Nonviolence or something like that. I don't know, but this dude, great guy, funny guy. What he taught me was, you know, we have a lot of respect for your Martin Luther King. His theory on nonviolence, which he got from Gandhi.
Mm,
Um, we have a lot of respect. Making change through nonviolence. For
mm,
Martin Luther King. He says, but in the West, you only think of nonviolence is action,
mm,
nonviolent action,
mm,
physical nonviolence through physical. However, there's more to nonviolence than just action. There are three levels. There's nonviolence in action, nonviolence in speech, and nonviolence in thought. Are
mm,
your words violent?
mm,
Do you yell at your kids? That's
mm,
violence. That's what your kids are
mm,
learning.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, or do you talk to them in a kind of comparing, compassionate way? Because then if you have like a little girl,
Mm.
and the only way you get her to follow the rules or obey is by yelling at her, that's what she's gonna know, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what she's gonna be attracted to. And so
Mm-hmm.
some dude who shows her love, she's like, I don't speak that language,
Mm.
you know.
Mm.
Um, and
Oh
so
man, that's deep right there.
yeah.
I don't think that's a conversation they ready for either.
All right, well, hold
I
on
don't
from
think
that
they
one.
ready for that conversation.
um,
Oh
and
man,
so
that's cool because I mean that's the reality.
yeah,
That reality, and then it gets to the point where these women, they they can't leave those situations. They can't get out of those abusive situations because of that.
yeah.
That's the sad fact. You know what I
Um,
mean?
so coming back to this nonviolence in action, nonviolence in speech, nonviolence in thought. And this Tibetan dude was telling me nonviolence in thought is the most important one, and it's the hardest one to be held accountable for you. Because the
Not,
people
not,
around you can hold you accountable for your actions. They can hold you accountable for your speech. But being held accountable for your thoughts, that's just between you and your God.
mm-hmm,
So are your thoughts violent? And the theory behind this is, what I learned out there is everything begins with our thoughts. Thoughts
mm-hmm,
turn into speech. Speech turn into action.
mm-hmm.
If someone has violent actions, leading
Yeah.
up to it, they had violent thoughts.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Um, yeah. And so that perspective just changed my life.
And our MACM formula to success is, let me see if you can see this. It's if you know better, you think better. If you think better, you do better. You know what I mean? That's our MACM formula to success. With that, you're thinking about violent thoughts. Where does the knowing better come in?
Huh?
Where does the knowing come in? You know what I mean? Because when I'm looking at our formula to success, if you know better, you think better. If you think better, you do better. Before you can
What?
think better, before you can think them violent thoughts, how did you know them thoughts were violent before
Yeah.
you thought them? You know what
That's
I
what
mean?
knowing. When I was 15, I didn't know that my thoughts mattered at all.
Mm,
How I sat there and thought that was just happening inside me. I didn't
mm,
know that eventually those would turn into actions.
mm.
I didn't know
And
that.
just
That's
so
knowing
y'all know
better.
too, hey, just so y'all know too, we got a whole list of questions that we dodging. You know what I mean? This conversation, it keeps going me. It's sending me back places. You know what I mean? Again, what we're talking is experience based. A lot of these conversations, we didn't have to go find no data to give y'all what we are experiencing. I firmly believe that we are the experts. The folks who go get the data that we send them, they for some reason became the experts in collecting data. Yeah, I'll just say that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Go ahead,
Um.
Renzo.
With man, when you were talking, like when you talk, man, I got like all the greatest ideas. Then you start talking, like, fool.
You gotta cut in. You know what I
Oh,
mean? You
so
gotta bounce
going
in
back
there.
to our questions and violence being glorified in our community. Even at the beginning of this section, I brought up Chapo.
Mhm.
We hold these guys
Mhm.
in high esteem, man. You know
Man,
why? Because he attained great success through violence, monetary success through violence. And we look, many people in our community look up to these guys. It gets glorified. Um,
and I mean, and the thing is, they looking up to him. Like looking up to them is gonna do something for them. Like they're gonna get
yeah,
something out of looking up and perpetuating that violent shit. You know what I mean? Like that's like they get attaboys, you know what I mean,
yeah,
for
and that's the
that's just
media
cool.
too. But they don't tell you the other parts. The parts where he can't sleep in the same place twice a night.
No.
The
Mm-hmm.
parts where his son got killed by a rival cartel. The parts where he's locked up for who knows how long.
Mm-hmm.
They don't tell you those parts. Of how it put his family in danger. You
At
know,
all. At all.
um, all you see is the money and the
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle.
And for the most part in our culture, that's all people need to see to be
Yeah,
convinced. It's the money and the lifestyle, and that's the sad part. You know what I mean? So looking at again, we looking at the violence in our community and our culture, and I know growing up, even right now, growing up, my grandma, my mom, they always told me if somebody hit you, you better hit them back. If you
Mm-hmm.
don't hit them back, I'm gonna whoop you when you get home or something like that. You know what I mean? Right now, to this day, with my children, I teach them if somebody hits you, you better hit them back, and you better keep hitting them too, because they shouldn't have hit you in the first place. So it's coming back to, when did the eye for an eye, when did that kind of culture become our culture? You know what I mean? When did the eye for an eye become our culture instead of doing what we know what we are supposed to do? And that's, I don't know if fighting back or hitting back is what we are supposed to do, but I know that's what we were learned. I know that's what we were taught,
Yeah.
to always hit back, to always swing back, to always fight back. So to that point, who can blame, who can blame us for our violent nature right now if that's what
Yeah.
we've been
Here,
taught since we were kids?
here's where that began to shift for me, is because I used to see that as weakness. Man, you gonna let someone hit you, you gonna do nothing back. I used to see that as weakness. Man, you better rock that dude. I used to see that as strength.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I began studying the differences between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, I used to ride with Malcolm growing up. Man, shoot, man, I would read his stuff. I'm like, man, this dude, oh yeah,
The
you
truth,
know,
all right.
yeah. And then I went to like a activist workshop one time with someone who either worked with Martin Luther King Jr. or has some type of connection. And what I learned from him was his nonviolent movement. They practiced it. Like they would literally prepare themselves to be beat, to be humiliated in the restaurants, to that they would yell at each other's face, and they practiced being nonviolent. They practiced taking that kind of abuse and
And
respond
that shit is
peacefully.
beyond me. That
And that
shit is
takes more strength.
beyond me.
That takes more strength to respond
Man.
peacefully, because they know if they were to react with violence, they'd be dead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
they'd be
mean,
dead.
but still, fuck, to practice being spit on, practice being slapped, practice
Yeah,
being called a nigga and all that other shit. And oh man, they practice this shit.
yeah. And so that's when I realized, man, that wasn't weakness. That was strength. That took more strength. For me to,
According to who?
huh?
According to how we grew up, that shit's weak as fuck.
I mean, well, I say that for me, it takes more control over my emotions to respond peacefully and to respond with violence. It's easier to just start swinging back for me. I love that shit. I love that. But it takes a lot more strength to respond peacefully to abuse, man. For me, right? I'm thinking about myself right here. And so that's when I began to shift my mindset. That's when I began to change the way I thought. That's not weakness, man. That's strength. Um, yeah, man. What you think? Yo, Phil, you on? Man, Phil, where you at? Am I trying to have this conversation by myself? Um, Here's another thing though. I heard you can't have happiness without peace. Me, I love to fight. I grew up fighting, but I wasn't happy. I didn't have peace. I decided to step away from violence. And I realized the further I get away from violent actions, the further I get away from violent speech, from violent thoughts, the happier I am, the more at peace I am. I don't walk around living in fear. Um, and I just know my personal experience. When my words are kind, I'm happier. I'm sure other people appreciate it too, but man, I'm happier. When my actions are peaceful,
Man, I just had
I'm
hella
happier.
technical difficulties. My bad, man. I don't know what was going
Man, I just
on.
started talking, like, man, where'd it go?
Yeah, I'm seeing my time and everything. Okay, I'm still up on time too. But I mean, even when you're making that shift in terms of thinking, in terms of your actions being and coming from compassion. All right, even when we were looking at that, Oh, that's checkmate. Even when we were looking at that, um, how do we not lose who we are in terms of culture? How do we not lose who we grew up, and I see a lot of that with even I'm even just speak on it too. Um, there's a lot of black men nowadays in the community that that has a great tongue when it comes to speaking to them folks. They do a great job code switching. You know what I mean? They did that crossover, and I'm asking how much of that do we lose? You know what I mean? Our culture, how much of our culture do we lose when we're thinking more compassionately, when we're doing more compassionately, in that essence? You know what I mean? What do you think?
Do you want to hold on to everything in your culture?
What was that?
Do you want to hold on to everything in your culture?
I mean, I think what's worth holding on to needs to be held on to.
Yeah. And what's worth letting go is worth letting go.
And yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
yeah. Let me go
Um,
ahead and get this checkmate in, you know what I mean? So you can see what it is. Yeah, to it. All right. Yeah, but this is let's go ahead and touch our last question just so we can touch this last question before we end the show too. Um, the last question I asked, how is it that we prefer and accept negative violent behavior over positive uplifting behavior?
man,
And that's even what we see with the music, that's even what we see with the TV shows, that's even what we saw in the classes and stuff like that. How is it that we easily accepted that behavior versus us shining like we supposed to?
I think throughout our conversation we've covered many of those pieces. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's what we learn, it's what we know, it's what we're attracted to. And it's also what's embedded into us, into our minds, through the media, through the music, everything you just mentioned. I feel like we get brainwashed to glorify violence,
Mm-hmm.
and we're attracted to it.
I mean, and it's still. I mean, but at the same time too, when it comes down to it, we're looking at knowing, because I think that's something that wasn't brought up. You know what I mean? With us knowing violent behaviors, knowing that it is violent behavior. Me saying if somebody hit you, hit them back is not saying um if somebody hit you, that's violence. If you hit them back, that is being violent as well. You know what I mean? So that knowing, that knowledge part, I believe, is something that we need to work on our
Yeah,
end,
yeah,
because for us to continue to accept this negative behavior like it's a whole move, like it's cool, it's just
yeah.
beyond me.
Here's where compassion comes in, and where the last 10 years I've grown in. Compassion is understanding. So if someone shows aggressive, negative, violent behavior towards me, my response isn't I need to defend myself. I need to do this or do. That used to be me. My
Mm-hmm.
response now is he's in pain.
Mm,
He's suffering.
mm,
You know, anger. There's that quote. Anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. If he's
mm,
angry, he's suffering. Um, and so I have that understanding now, that compassion. So I'm not gonna I don't want to respond with violence. Now I understand. He's probably more pain than I am.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
yeah.
All right, just so y'all can see what happened right there. You know what I mean? Just so y'all can see what happened right there clearly. Just so y'all can see what happened there clearly. All right. Um. Pardon words, Renzo. What you got for us?
Man, it's great talking to y'all, or especially you, Phil, having these conversations. Um, and I just want to how do we grow our community, man? Like, I don't know.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, and to that extent too. With I would say there are a few. You know what I mean? And I forgot who spit this analogy to me about a dark room. You know what I mean? And then a small candle in the corner. That small candle will brighten up the dark room. You know what I mean? And there's just that one candle. So
Yo,
there's a few of us who's out there making those steps to create this culture that we need, not the culture that we've adapted to, or
that
we
might have
adapt
been me like
from.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
I know that quote is be the light in your corner of the
Yep.
world.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. That's what we got for today, man. Every Thursday, we pushing ponds, we pushing topics. You know what I mean? And we gonna push them to the limit. We ain't saving nobody's feelings when it comes to these conversations. You gonna get it like it needs to be got, raw and uncut. All right. So again, thank y'all for tapping in with us. You know what I mean? Pushing ponds, pushing topics with King Phillip and Lorenzo El Magnifico. You know what I mean? I'm gonna get that right. It's gonna come off my tongue smooth and fluid. You know what I mean? All right. All
Got
right,
those
I'm
in the
kicking with
hands.
that. Look,
Lorenzo el Magnifico de Sanchez. Yeah.
that'll make all the difference, huh? All right. All right, Renzo, I'm gonna tap in with you. Hold on, we got a few comments, man. Intentional